Barbados' fishing industry is under significant pressure, resulting in higher prices at the market for consumers. In this episode, we talk to newly appointed Chief Fisheries Officer, Dr. Shelly Ann-Cox, on her vision for the industry. We'll also hear from boat owner Corey Nurse on the impact fluctuating fuel prices are having on his business, before heading into the fish market to talk to vendors. I'm Krystal Hoyte, and this is In the Know. Dr. Cox, congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you, Krystal.
And thank you for joining us. It's been just over a month since you became the Chief Fisheries Officer, and some might say that you have your work cut out for you. And I know that you've already outlined your vision, so I want to talk about that as well as some of the strategies that you'll be putting in place to help transform this industry.
Yes, many would say it's a very ambitious vision, and of course I wouldn't have articulated it unless I thought I had the support of the industry. And it was very important when I did apply for the post, I asked them if I had their support. And that vision really articulates the conversations that I've been having with them in the past 10 years. So now being able to actually effect change and try to work towards the change we want to see. I mean, within the last 4 weeks, we've started some cleaning at the landing sites because we spoke about, viewing fishing as more than just a career that we don't value. And part of this is really taking pride in ourselves and taking pride in our surroundings. And you would be familiar with a lot of the boatyards around the island, and they are in a deplorable state, unfortunately. But we have started some cleanup at some strategic landing points across the island. We started at Half Moon Fort last Friday, but in the next few weeks you would see cleanups at Concept Bay and Oystins. We started as well cleaning up in the boatyard behind Fisheries Division because it was very important for us to build the blocks of trust, and that trust had broken down over time between the division and the industry. So I would say this is really my first goal, because I believe if that goal is accomplished, then everything else will fall into place. The fishery sector is complex, and we sit, in the blue economy as well too. So we interface with lots of other sectors, but really trying to engage the youth into the fishery as well as make it more attractive, transforming it so that things like vessel monitoring systems and IT and, other, exciting technologies, artificial intelligence will start to, attract them. They can see themselves as data scientists working in fisheries. I think what we want them to fall in love with the sea first. And once you fall in love with the sea, then you can start to see some careers in the fishing industry as viable careers that you can build a life, support your family on. And that is just more than just an old guy going out to sea with a cast net. That is some of these boats that are fully decked out with electronics, fish finders, the best and the latest in telecoms equipment. And we have to really feature some of our guys. I mean, we have captains that are 31-year-old going out 220 miles and a steward of more than 500,000 size boat. So they are examples, and we need to do our best in terms of featuring these people so that people can have a mentor or somebody to look towards. I think if they don't know that it exists or it's there, then it's something that seems too far beyond their reach. And we should be proud that more than 90% of our boats are actually made in Barbados. There is no car manufacturer in Barbados or a cycle, but yet we have most of our boats being made in Barbados. And the culture of boat building and those shipwrights that we feel very proud as nation builders. And even that, marine mechanics, marine electricians, even boat agents, people that are actually, working on the logistics of getting the boat out to sea, managing the staff and the captains and so on. This is becoming, a item in our fisheries worker in terms of the category that we're seeing a lot, and more women getting involved in that part of boat agents as well. We don't have many female fisher ladies, unfortunately, and this is an area we want to try to work towards in terms of attracting women to actually go and venture out to sea. We started some action as well on the digital side of things, trying to start the procurement of those 10 tablets so that we can digitize our data collection. So we are hoping in the next few weeks that we can have our fisheries division personnel equipped with those tools and seen visibly along the landing sites, because catch and effort data especially is important to really inform our fisheries management and for us to make decisions.
In recent times, there's been a reported decline of last catches. Last fish ultimately results in higher prices at the market. What are some of the contributing factors?
Yes, I see this has been an issue, especially on the radio programs. But not only has there been a decrease in landings, due to sargassum influxes from 2011, but the increase in diesel, gasoline as well, the increase in ice, bait, as well as some of food costs. So a typical input cost for a boat will be those main key things: bait, ice, fuel, and grub for the crew. We don't do a good job of capturing labor costs, which we should, but these are some of the contributing factors. So when we think about what it really takes for a boat to leave dock, to go out to sea and then come back to make the sales, some boats will vary. I mean, the smaller boats, would be $4,000 in input costs, versus a long liner like Lady Carmen that's 56 feet would be about $21,000. So when we really think about that high input cost and the risk, because I think some of us don't take into consideration the risk. Some of these boats venturing 700, 500, 300 miles offshore just to target high price fish species like yellowfin tuna or our flying fish and dolphin fish especially, which are our two main landings. But since sargassum, we've seen a dramatic decline in flying fish landings, about 52%. This is when we did a check back in 2019, but it's time again to try to quantify so we have specific statistics. So I think it might be lower. From speaking to some of the fishermen, the boat that really caught the most fish for the season, which will start about October, November, was only 17,000 flying fish. And back in the day before 2011, boats will catch 25 to 35,000 flying fish as a normal trip. So we're significantly below what we are accustomed to. And I think even beyond that, flying fish as a national icon and a part of our, coastal heritage, our national identity, this is something that we really need to work towards and see. Maybe it's a change of gear. We've been discussing that in terms of innovation. Maybe it's a cause of, harvesting sargassum at sea. There are lots of things to discuss, but again, part of building out the work plan that we want to see in the next 5 to 10 years.
And even as we talk about last fishing, there is the issue of overfishing. How is your office going to encourage more sustainable practices?
Well, I mean, first we have to do our proper fish stocks assessments to even determine if we are overfishing. It is true that the reef fish population has declined over the years, and I want to say yes, we as the industry need to have those sustainable fishing practices in place, but it's also a combination of factors. And actually, managing our marine pollution and our coastal development to make sure that the habitats that these fish need to thrive are actually in the condition. I can't say pristine because it's always a delicate balance between stakeholders, but really making sure that we have sustainable practices. Many of you would be familiar with the small dolphin fish that we're seeing in the markets, and there has been a regional thrust to implement a size limit for dolphins over 7 pounds. And this has been an area of contention in some sense because persons think it's a different species. The smaller dolphin would have a roe, so it's assumed that it's more mature. But I think our trust will be to really implement a dolphin tagging study here in Barbados. There are some in the region that We have our concept being fisher folk participating in, but we need to have something similar here, so that we have the evidence base. I think what we lacked was, not doing the science and making sure that the science was integrated with the traditional knowledge. And that is, I think, one of our main thrusts in the future, is to really get the fisher folk and the fisheries division and even our colleagues at Coastal to be involved in, research programs that will really help us to make the decisions that we need to. But sustainable fishing practices in that, enforcing size limits, even how we go about with our gear. For instance, fish pots are supposed to have a biodegradable trap so that it doesn't result in ghost fishing if the trap gets damaged or lost at sea because of sea conditions. And this hasn't been enforced since the 90s when these regulations were implemented. So really our monitoring and control and surveillance has to be increased. Our staff complement at the moment won't get us to where we want to be. This is why we have to work very closely, and that's why co-management is key in trying to manage a small scale artisanal fleet, because our division is small, but the industry, each boat becomes a data point. Each captain becomes a researcher, and crew becomes a researcher to document what they see at sea, so that we can know why these changes are responding to changes in the levels of population that we have. And even beyond sustainable practices, how are we marking our catch in some of these niche markets that seek out sustainably sourced fish, and fish that traceability is a key factor. If we can prove that our fish are sustainably sourced in regions that aren't protected, then we can ask for a higher price for our fish.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I do want to talk about exportation, which has been on the table for quite some time, especially to that EU market. And though I do know that the previous Minister of the Economy did make some strides in that effort as it relates to updating the fish markets, and even from a legislation perspective, we're still not there yet. Is this a priority area for you?
Yes, it is a priority for us in the next few years. I mean, we are building on over 20 years of exporting to the US. So on the side of fish handling and quality, we're still doing pretty well. We have excellent quality control officers in the Bridgetown Fisheries Complex that are championing these initiatives, but yet our infrastructure still is not up to scratch. It goes beyond just upgrading the vendor areas with the surfaces, but even on the dock side, the temperature control environment, we will need to enclose the market a bit more. Our boxing, because we export yellowfin tuna mainly, but our large fish processors have been exporting flying fish, dolphin fish, swordfish for years, and I think we kind of forget about them sometimes, because many of them are HACCP certified and ISO certified. So this moving towards the implementation of that to be able to export to the EU will involve strengthening our partnerships with some of our large fish processors. And right now I know that they're busy reviewing the seafood legislation for me. I know I've gotten some comments before, but that legislation still needs to be made into law later this year. That would specify these sanitary and phytosanitary conditions. What would be the cost to get to ISO? ISO is very expensive, and we have to make sure that if we want to I think we need to get the markets to HACCP first, because that might be maybe $2 million to get there, and ISO is even further. So making all the stakeholders know the resources and the investment that would be needed, and to make sure that we can, do the cost recovery that is needed to do that. Beyond that, and working on some pilots with DigiFish, which see the installation of vessel monitoring systems on the boat, so we can actually determine catch location and start building out the traceability process. And those VMS are going to integrate with 2 smart scales. We're hoping to have them here maybe in March. Those smart scales will scan, weigh, automatically take the lengths of the fish, and we enter the grade, the temperature, and it prints out a tag. So when this tag is applied to the box, persons on the other end, when when the fish is exported, they can scan and see all of that traceability information. That is also key for being able to access premium markets like the EU. So it's more than just the upgrade of markets and traceability, but it's also the training and capacity building for the existing standards and the resources that will be needed to really sustain these initiatives. But some things will be one-off, but sustaining them in the future. But I think even locally, we can try to build out our traceability to engage with some of the high-end restaurants and in the region because they don't have the tariffs that might be needed in the premium markets. So we have also been looking into Bahamas as an area to export to.
Okay, so transforming the industry, sustainable practices, and possibly even exporting to more markets.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us. Coming up, boat owner Corey Nurse says fuel prices are too burdensome. Operational expenses have almost doubled for boat owners and fishermen in Barbados. Corey Nurse, who operates 3 fishing vessels, says it's a costly undertaking.
The biggest factor is fuel. Fuel, I would say, has almost doubled. On average, 10, 11-day trip for me would have been maybe between $1,000, $1,200. Now I'm at roughly $2,500 to $3,000 on an average 11-day trip. Usual ice is around, depending on which boat, usual ice is around $1,000 to $1,200. Food went from $500, we are now at around $800 per trip. So that's where we are.
He says with input costs in the thousands, fishing is becoming quite the gamble, as there are times fishermen go out to sea and come back empty-handed.
My first 2 trips to start the season, which would have been in November, early December, was nothing. And I could have out just over 9,000 and nothing. And still had to regroup and start again. But it's the luck of the draw. It's how it is. Because the boat can't go out without fuel. The boat can't go out without food. It can't go out without ice. So you got to first find that operational cost to get the boat to go out, with the expectation that you recover the operational cost and then profit. This is also dangerous work, given that you're hundreds of miles offshore. The nearest hospital could be days away, so you've got to be always aware and present of your surroundings, and health and safety is like one of the utmost priorities out there. We just had to abandon a trip. Thankfully, it was an inshore trip, so we weren't that far offshore, just 7-8 miles, where one of the guys accidentally had a hook stuck in his finger. So I would have met them here Sunday morning, and we would have went off to the hospital to get it removed, which was $180. And then he was off for roughly about 2 weeks after having stitches and all the other stuff.
And while flying fish remains in high demand, it's in short supply, resulting in a much higher than usual price for consumers, retailing now at $10 for $40.
2 years before the sargassum, the flying fish catches were a lot, I would say, freer. It was more guaranteed to get flying fish on every trip. Dolphin were on average. But since the sargassum in 2011, the flying fish catches had declined. I mean, sometimes even on a regular trip, you don't even get enough flying fish for bait. So it's just how things has changed. In some seasons, we don't even get flying fish. I mean, those were replaced by the amberfish, but the volumes in flying fish have so declined that that's why you see the increase in prices now. Average amount of flying fish going for right now is around $250 per 100 from the boat. Then you still have to factor in the processing and all those other costs before they get to you, the consumer.
As it relates to solutions, he's calling on government to intervene.
I would start with fuel prices. If we can see a better way to work with government to improve on the pricing of fuel for fishing boats, that would be a good start, where we all could benefit.
Is it true that some fishermen actually go across the other Caribbean islands to fuel up?
Yes, it's mostly longliners. But their fuel bills are a lot bigger. They run out 6, 7, 8, 9,000 in fuel. So some of them will go to other islands to fuel up, which is still cheaper to sail from here to another island, fuel up, and then start their trip and still save.
When we return, we're heading to the market to hear from vendors.
Currently is very much under so much pressure, because one time you can get 100 flying fish for $30, and actually now you're paying $250 for flying fish. You could have got the dolphin at $4 per pound. Now you have to pay $10 to $12 per pound. The amber fish is really not coming at all, and we're having some dolphins, and they're not really that big. And it depends on the sizes. When you get the small ones, and sometimes when I said small, these ones that are small, they have already been grown because they have the rows in them, and they're sold from the boat at $10 per pound, whereas you get the bigger ones like the 15 to 20 pound, and they are selling from the boat at like $12 per pound.
How are consumers responding to the increase in price?
Well, some consumers are buying, and it's a bit challenging because you know that many people are still unemployed, and they don't have the money to buy their fish, but some people are still buying.
The industry is not like how it used to be. You understand? Customers are not coming like before. Consumers are not coming like before because, as we say, diesel has gone up. You understand? And the fishermen have to increase their prices. They have no choice because just like how I have a family at home to support, they have a family at home to support. You understand? And what we're trying to get across to the public is that we're not raising the prices because we want enough money. You understand? We have no choice. You understand? Because if the fishermen raise their price, we got to raise their price too. And they have no choice but to raise their price. You understand? Because they got to pay the same amount for diesel as anybody else. You understand? And one of the other challenges is our fishermen are getting old. You understand? They're getting old. There's no doubt about it. I'm 45 years old. Imagine me another 5-6 years. You understand? We need young people in the fishing industry. I'm going to keep on saying it. We need some help with the young people to get them in the fishing industry.
What do you think can be done to attract young people into this industry?
Train them. Offer them a training program. There are fishermen here that are willing to train them to go fishing. There are people in here that are willing to train young people how to bone fish, how to scale fish, how to cut dolphins, how to cut marlin. It's not hard. You understand? And it's an honest dollar. When you finish and you cut a dolphin, you get $5. If you get dolphins like extremely, they may get 40-pound dolphin or something, and you charge a little $10 for it, yes, the customer, you pay you for it, you understand? Imagine if you cut 10 dolphins, you understand? Then you get another 10. You carry home $100 in your pocket. You understand me? You carry home $100. And you might get other work, you understand? You might get a work, you might get kingfish, you get something, you carry home money in your pocket, you're not going home empty-handed. You understand? If you cut dolphins all during the week, imagine the money, you get money in your pocket. You don't have to go there and sit down on the streets and wait for somebody to give you the money. You're making it yourself. So I'm encouraging some young guys, some young girls to come into the market, ask a question. You understand? Ask a question. Because we need y'all. And like we want one, we need one. You understand? We need young people in here. We have to get this industry back on its feet. This industry is dying. I am not going to stand here and lie. This industry is dying.
Whether you're a fisherman, vendor, or consumer, there's no denying that the sustainability of the fishing industry is important, and solutions to stabilize prices at every level are needed. I'm Krystal Hoyte. Thank you for joining us.